Maya McAmer. I am the director for the Boulder Watershed Collective, and I'm going to facilitate this conversation today. And the reason we split into two different rooms, a city room and a county room, is because we recognize that the needs of people who live in the urban area versus the unincorporated area are very different, as are the resources available to you to help you with defensible space and home hardening and other wildfire preparedness needs. So today we have a representative, Brett Haberstick, here from Wildfire Partners, along with Jim Webster, and then we also have Ben Full with the Colorado State Forest Service. And so Brett and Ben are each going to give just a short presentation on some of the resources that are available to county residents. And then we'll just have it open to questions and conversation, and we can have a real organic conversation about whatever arises from the previous presentation or this one. So, Brett, I'm going to have you go first.
All right.
Are you able to share your screen for the slides? Oh, Nate.
Or Maya, before we do that,
Yeah.
1 second, I'm just finishing up a poll and then I'm going to post that poll. And then we are now recording. But yeah, 1 sec, I just need to finish up one thing here. Sorry.
Okay.
One of these
We're going to
questions.
do a quick poll first. So that poll is just going to come up on your screen, and then you'll be able to answer just a quick question or two, and then we can see the results all together in the group here.
Yeah, apologies. I thought this question had saved, but so I'm just kind of doing it on the fly. So excuse some of the.
Do you want to just do it in between? Do you want to just do it in between Brett and Ben?
Yeah, maybe we could just do that then.
Okay. All right, then Brett, why don't you go ahead and share your screen?
So I've not, out of all of these Zoom calls that I've been on, I've actually not done that.
That's okay.
Which is really odd.
That's okay. Erin's going to share your screen, your slides for you, and then you can just let her know when you want to advance.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for being with us tonight. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you about something that we're very passionate about, that being fire mitigation, fire preparedness, and of course, Wildfire Partners. It is a nationally recognized program that has won awards for its innovation as well as its approach. And I think as we talk through tonight, if you're not already familiar with it, it's something that we would obviously encourage you to participate in because it is a really good opportunity to gain information about your specific property and address your specific concerns, which is what mitigation is really about when we think about home hardening and preparedness. It's all about how you feel and what you are, where you sit with things. So you see the program website address as well as the telephone number. Please don't hesitate to reach out either way. We're here for you. If you go to the next slide. There are a lot of things that are special about Boulder County, and believe it or not, wildfire awareness, wildfire preparation is one of them. And if I remember right, Boulder County was the first county in the United States to really kind of say, shake shingles on a roof are not necessarily the best thing and shouldn't be applied. And I think that was in the early 70s. As you see from the list there are a lot of different ways in which wildfire awareness, wildfire preparations, and mitigations have been approached with land use codes, modeling and mapping. Community chipping is a very popular thing, often run through our program as well as through many fire protection districts, Firewise communities. Again, there are a number of them here in Boulder County. Collaborative committees, CWPPs, almost every fire protection in the county has a community wildfire preparedness plan. There are some fire protection districts that have really gone in and tried to create fuel breaks to protect their residents in the case of a wildfire moving through an area. And there's a bunch of other stuff. Wildfire awareness is something that grew out of the Boulder County CWPP, and that is in May. And that's all really since 1989, which isn't too long ago. And since then, we had a rather small fire. If you go to the next slide. And it's a small fire by comparison standards to today, the 4 Mile Canyon fire. I don't know how many in this room remember this fire or had personal experience with it. My background, I was chief of Sunshine Fire, which is one of the fire protection districts this fire burned through. I was fire marshal during it. I've been a volunteer firefighter for about 13 years. I'm currently rostered with Netherland Fire. And I've been a part of federal incident management teams that have gone around fighting fires. And this is one of the fires that everybody was very focused on. Destroyed 169 homes. And at that time, it was the most destructive fire in the state of Colorado. We've learned some things. If you'll go to the next slide, we've learned some things since then. And here are some really 4 important points that we would like to share. You can read, but we have the opportunity to significantly reduce the potential for wildland-urban interface fire disasters here in the county. And that focus is really turned towards embers and a role ember buildup has at particular spots around your house, on your house. It's a very important thing to pay attention to. Second is the opportunity. This requires change in approach. And this change in approach really resulted in the Wildfire Partners program. 3, and the next 2 are really, really fundamental, important for any program, anyone living in the wild and urban phase. And number 3, the responsibility for reducing vulnerability to wildfire really rests with the homeowner. As it was said in the general session, fire resources are not necessarily as plentiful as everybody would like. And so that early response really rests with homeowners and it rests with neighbors. Number 4, wild and urban interface fire disasters can't be prevented without homeowners actively creating and maintaining home ignition zones, which is the first 5 feet up to 30 feet and then beyond up to 100 feet. With low home ignition potential, and that's home hardening, which we saw some great examples of, and hopefully we'll be able to talk some more tonight about it. If you go to the next slide. So the goal of Wildfire Partners really is that homeowners in high wildfire risk areas, such as Boulder County, really perform mitigations based on available science for as long as they live in their homes. And that is really the goal of Wildfire Partners and of wildfire mitigation in general. Next slide. Wildfire Partners is a public-private partnership. It's composed of 40 organizations that all came together in terms of advisory boards, in terms of being able to really help refine the assessment tool, to focus agendas or focus more on the risks that are meaningful. It's funded through federal, state, and county government funding. Thank you for everybody who pays tax dollars, because FEMA is a very large supporter of this, but as is the state of Colorado and the county. Next slide. The value to homeowners of Wildfire Partners really are these 5 things, but I'll add one at the end, and it's transparency in terms of your level of preparedness, home assessment. And the home assessment is really something that is unique. It can be anywhere from about 2 to 4 hours in terms of how long we spend on your property, talking about your concerns, your risks. It is a program that's structured with ongoing supports. We work 6 days a week and are available almost any time of the day. Financial assistance is another one of those benefits of the program. Currently, we have grant funding that has a mitigation match of up to 50%, depending on eligibility and overall cost. But insurability, I'm sure anybody who is in the mountains has had to try to get home insurance lately. And whenever there's a big wildfire, that is always a problem. And so one of the things that this program has really stood out to a number of insurance companies is the degree to which it really represents commitment on the homeowner's part to reduce risk. And as such, the companies look at your home, your property, or a mitigated property through the program as more insurable. And that is worth its weight in gold. Discounts aside, insurability, getting insurance, having insurance is really the key to a lot of issues here in the mountains. Next slide. So why do insurance companies like Wildfire Partners? It really is effective in risk reduction. It's designed to meet a lot of Insurance Institute research findings, that being mostly ember flow, as well as combustible vegetation within the first 5 feet of the house, as well as home hardening. We focus on the parcel, we focus on your property and your land, so that's unique. Screening of applicants, obviously, there are some things that we take into account. And when we bring someone or have someone in the program that we can answer questions about afterwards. There's no cost, which is a great thing for a lot of homeowners. Experienced mitigation specialists, I'm one of them. I shared my background with you. We have others who are in the program with extensive forestry backgrounds as well as fire. So it's really a unique collaboration of a lot of people to bring some really good resources to your disposal. As I mentioned, we have a lot of technical support, and the technical support, it could be chipping, it could be how to deal with building issues and all of that. And as well, we're very responsive in terms of assessment and recertifications. Next slide. So in 2016, we had another fire. This one was not too actually far away from where I live, outside Netherland. And it was the Cold Springs fire. As you can read, 44% of homes within the fire perimeter, which is about 524 acres, were in the county mitigation programs. The area around Netherland has actually been very active in the Wildfire Partners program and with mitigation in general. So we had 44% of the homes within that fire perimeter in the program versus 10% of homes in the 4 Mile Canyon fire. So you could see the dramatic increase since 2010 in awareness and wanting to be a part of something, wanting to do something, and hopefully make an effective kind of contribution to risk reduction, both for firefighters as well as residents and community members. Next slide. So all 19 homes involved in the county mitigation program survived. 8 other homes, the only 8 homes were lost in the fire, were not. So it's really telling that the kind of mitigations that we do, are the kind of mitigations that we really support and advocate for, and really talk with residents about, can be effective. And the Cold Spring fire was a really good test of that. And I think we have one more slide after this. So importantly, and I think was really become the hot touchstone over the last couple of years, last year especially, I think we can all relate that it was a very hot, windy, dry year. And we have a new era of the type of fires that burn in that kind of situation. So climate-driven wildfires are something that we live with now. And Boulder County and the partners of the Wildfire Program are really trying to help residents deal with that and address their concerns, because they're pretty significant. All right, one last slide, I think, and we'll end there. No, that's it. Thank you for the time, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you, Erin, for the help.
Thank you, Brett. That was great. I think if you have questions and want to put them in the chat right now, go ahead. And I think we're going to work through the speakers, and then we'll just open it up to more participatory questions at the end. Nate, if you want to put your poll up. If you're ready to do that, go ahead and do that. And then Jim, if you wanted to talk after we take this poll about the chipping program, I think that would be a good time.
I think Brett mentioned the chipping program. I don't have a lot to add. It's a service of Wildfire Partners. We have a free chipping program for those who are eligible. It is an application process in terms of limited space. We can't chip all 2,500 partners, but that's a new service we started last year that partners are eligible, but they have to sign up and apply to get that service. So that's been launched this month. And so we're taking applications right now for free chipping for Wildfire Partners. For people who aren't in the program, they have to join the program and get an assessment first before being eligible for the free chipping. So it's a service for the existing partners, a benefit of the program to help with the maintenance.
And that's a great benefit, actually, because it allows people to continually work on their homes year after year. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, Ben?
Yes, so I do not have a PowerPoint, but what I will do, since this is focused on home work you could do around your home, I'm going to start with a document that we have, but I'll introduce myself. Ben Full, I'm the supervisory forester out of our Boulder field office for the Colorado State Forest Service. We're rather unique in the nation, one of only a few state forestry agencies that are still part of a land-grant university. As such, one of our primary missions or operations is that we're service and outreach oriented. In Colorado, there are not any state forests. There are some state lands that we do help manage on. But what that means is a lot of the work that I do and my staff does and my colleagues around the state is we work with municipalities and for the most part, private landowners. So my office, we work in Boulder and Gilpin County. So I'm going to start off with our agency just updated and released our home ignition zone guide. I'm going to try to share my screen. Are you getting the full screen there? Okay, great. So this is, what historically was referred to as our defensible space guide and creating defensible space guide, which used to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5 to 8 pages. The new one is 16 pages, but that's not really the change that's been made. The emphasis has been shifted or upgraded, I should say. Historically, when we talk about defensible space, we would focus a lot on vegetation around homes. Our last iteration of this guide shifted and started focusing on not just the vegetation, but the home construction. This newest guide, I'll go through it briefly. And a lot of the topics that are in here, Brett just talked about, Jamie talked about, and Jerry talked about in the presentation earlier. But what I want to show you is the emphasis is two things: structure ignitability and defensible space. So the structure and the vegetation. So I'm going to scroll through and just give you a preview. This is something you can go on our website and download. You can request hard copies if you want. I want to highlight a few things, namely this page. If I did my job tonight, I'd have you walk away along with the others that have presented, knowing that if your primary goal is keeping your home safe, then this is what you focus on. A large part of my job is focusing a lot of other things farther away from homes. But if your goal is to keep your home safe and you safe, this is what you focus on. So like I said, this document talks about structure ignitability. You heard about that in the presentation earlier, and what we refer to as defensible space, or the modification of vegetation around your home. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details. You can read it later. These updates were made to conform and align with IBHS and NFPA standards, national standards, the same standards that Wildfire Partners adheres to. So 16 pages long, you can take your time to read it. It gives you a lot of the why you do things, and then certainly the prescriptions of how to do things. So Maya had asked me to present that, and I'd like to open it up for questions on if people have certain questions about how to mitigate around their home. But one other thing, I'll see if I can share a different screen here. Maya, are you seeing the forest atlas? Okay, on my side, I'm not. So as I said, our agency, we work with private landowners, certainly focusing on defensible space and home ignition zone is something we do. But a lot of the work we do spreads out beyond homes, and we focus on forest health and landscape issues. So one of the online tools that we have related to this is what we refer to as our Colorado Forest Atlas. There's a lot of information here. I'll jump into the wild. Can you see this, Maya? Okay. So packed in this online atlas, it's an interactive mapping tool. And one of what's most pertinent to what we're talking about tonight is the wildfire risk viewer. And anybody can have access to this. You can sign up for a professional viewer. It's pretty easy. That'll give you a little more interaction and ability to download data if you want. But what I want to show you guys is, just some things that you can glean from this tool specific to Boulder County. One of the key things on this, I should say about this tool is this is meant more for a landscape assessment and in a view. As such, a lot of the pixels on here, a lot of the data in here is aggregated to 30-meter parcels. So, as I go in here, what I'm showing right now is what we refer to as a wildfire risk. So somebody looked on this tool and zoomed into their home. They wanted to find out what the risk at their home was, and let's just say it's in this yellow. The yellow would, if you looked at the legend, says it's low, but the intensity is very high. So what I wouldn't want somebody to do is come to this tool, look at this, and see if their home's in an area with low risk. Everybody who lives in the WUI, everybody who lives in the mountains is going to be or can be exposed to fire. So again, for the purposes of this, this workshop tonight, you need to do the work around your home. This tool is meant more for you to understand the context of where you live and how you can work with your neighbors. So I can go through, if you want to learn more about what this map is presenting, you can scroll down and you can read through kind of how the sausage is made. To kind of give you more in-depth knowledge of where you live and what the risks are. Also linked within this program are some of the tools and programs we have for you to work with your neighbors and your community on how to reduce wildfire risk. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with community wildfire protection plans, but every community in Boulder County does have a wildfire protection plan. If you want a list of those, you can go here. You can read through actions you can take with your community to reduce risk. And then Maya, I'm going to jump to you see my screen?
It was there, but then it went away. You're not sharing anymore.
Well, I'm going to stop there. I'd
Okay.
rather hear questions since we have such a small audience.
Yeah, I just invite everyone right now. Nate, go ahead, and then I would invite everyone now to just unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question since we're so small.
Cool. Yeah, I'm just going to relaunch the poll. I don't know if we got everyone, but we can.
It seemed like it was hard to click on the answers.
Yeah, here, try this one. So if everyone just wants to try to do this quickly, and then I can share the results right after. But this can give folks an idea too of some of the things that other people in the county and landowners in the mountains have kind of started to prioritize. I think we have 14 minus 4 of us, so 11 of the. Give it about 15 more seconds, and then, all right, and then we can. So this is just so you can see some of the results right now. About 50%. So some people are enrolled, a lot haven't, and some are interested. And then these are some of the things folks have done to start fitting around their house. Some of those being, moving combustibles away from the home, removing trees near the home, shrubs, living trees, installing house numbers, stuff like that. So a great start, and hopefully this gives you a little bit more steps to move forward. But that's all I've got. So.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Brett or Jim or Ben?
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Thanks. Are there county resources to help with like the cost of tree removal?
Brett, you want to take that?
I was just going to say, no, this is perfect for you.
Or either one. Yes, there are county resources currently. The idea is homeowners' responsibility for the cost, but for early adopters, we try to get some grant funding, and sometimes we're successful. So currently we do have some grant funding. So it's a cost share. So for forestry work, we have 10 forestry contractors that have gone through a procurement process and are eligible. And we provide 50% of the forestry cost up to $2,000. And then we also have need-based, if people are low income, can apply for additional assistance. So, but that's not a permanent financial assistance that comes based on availability and eligibility. There are requirements. FEMA grant money has lots of strings, but essentially most people are currently, if you sign up today and want to work with Wildfire Partners, we do have some financial assistance at this time.
And beyond the county, it depends on where you live. Some of the local fire protection districts do have state and federal grants where they do have grants that could help you if you are removing trees around your home.
And something to remember are the community sort yards, one outside Nederland and one outside Meeker. They're fantastic resources, absolutely fantastic resources. So if you've not been to one, they are free and they take a lot of things. There's some specifications as to what you need to do, but they're excellent resources. So that's another option.
So with this county sort yards, you can haul slash. If you're trimming your trees or shrubbery or mowing, you can haul all of your slash and vegetation there to dispose of.
Yeah, I think they also take like wood chips, providing they're just wood chips. They'll take pine needles, but they need to be they need to be, they need just to be bagged up.
Mhm. The other thing that some communities are doing now that I think is gaining steam is trying to get neighborhoods together and working with watershed coalitions or fire districts to do like joint projects that include defensible space and work into the forest, where they somehow this some funding is generated either from homeowners, fire districts, or other sources and can be matched with state Forest Service grants. So I think the way to generate that is probably to start to get familiar with your CWPP, your Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and see if there's momentum that you can generate in your community, and then contact your local fire district or watershed collective to work on projects like that. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I'd like to say thanks for the free chipping program, Jim and Brett, who's disappeared. It really is a motivator. I live in a community where people are very mitigation conscious and they do lots of it. And you will be amazed when you get up here with your chipper how much we have collected for you to chip. It just, there's something about free that gets people busy and cutting down trees and limbing. And I've had several neighbors offer to come and cut for me, and it's great. So we got a lot of limbs for you, and it really makes a difference. And thank you for that.
Well, that's really nice to hear. It's, we're providing some financial assistance with the chipper and crew, but the homeowners and participants are doing a lot of the work in terms of hauling the slash. And so it's a cost-effective investment for the county. And in order for us to continue, we need that support at the commissioner level and to show that this is a good program. So we'll be calling on all of you to say, if you like it, we need the support to be able to continue that, because we think it's a valuable service. It's not a replacement for the sort yards, but it's a complement. Not everybody can use the sort yards. So we're hopeful that you like that service. We're offering it, sort of throughout the mountains and the foothills. And we're hoping people respond and that we can continue to get support and grow it over time, because like you said, there's lots of material and we need a way to remove it. So thanks for that. I really appreciate it, Kate.
It's a great way to build community too. I mean, when I do assessments and work with community members, it really is a great way to bring people together in a really proactive way, because it really gets people thinking as a group about wildfire risk and how each other affects the other. So it's really good.
Kate, can I ask you, how does your community, is that community approach, how is that generated? Does everybody just do their own thing and it happens at the same time, or is there something that's generated there?
Well, this is a community on a private road with 35-acre lots. So we have a sort of sense of being somewhat self-sufficient and interdependent. So part of it is just the community for a long time has been cohesive. Part of it is that we started talking about and participating in Wildfire Partners as soon as it was announced, because it makes so much sense for us. We have, we're in a high danger zone. So I think it's ongoing. Every time somebody new moves into the neighborhood, they get the Wildfire Partners spiel from me and others, and they're signing up. And, we had one who was fairly new who said, oh no, I'm doing mitigation, I don't need it. But they had their assessment last Friday and it was a good thing. So part of it is the peer pressure. Part of it is we have some volunteer firefighters in the neighborhood. It's just a lot of consciousness. And the 4 Mile fire. The 4 Mile fire was, it touched the western edge of our property. It did not make it all the way here, thankfully, but that certainly raised the awareness of how easy it would be. So we talk about not if the fire is going to come, we talk about when the fire comes, how are we going to be ready?
That's awesome. That makes me happy to hear
good.
how that's happening in your neighborhood. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I'll ask a question. I was evacuated last fall for the Calwood and Left Hand Canyon fires. And I was not familiar with Wildfire Partners before. I'm really excited about this. You said you have to apply and be accepted. So what's how do you evaluate who's accepted into the program?
So we look at a couple different criteria. We have a large demand, and so we want to have a chance of success. And so we invest a lot of resources in our partners. So one thing we look for is a commitment to ongoing mitigation. So there's a number of questions online, wildfirepartners.org. So people who aren't willing to commit to follow through will not be accepted. There's a couple other criteria. There's several questions. If you have a wood shake roof, which is a minority, that's a high risk, and everyone's looking out to change those over. And we've had county regulations that prohibit the construction of new shake shingle roofs for a long time. So, we ask about the shake shingle roof, and if you're not willing to replace your shake shingle roof, you will not be accepted into Wildfire Partners. There's a couple other things. If you have a small lot and your neighbor is right on top of you, that increases your risk. So we ask in that case to try to get the neighbor to sign up so you can work together. And it depends, it's not necessarily a requirement, but you have to understand that the risk reduction on those small lots really requires some coordination outside property boundaries. Because in the Wildfire Partners assessment, we just look at what's on your property, your particular lot. But those are the things we look at in terms of the application, just to make sure we're as effective as possible. And it's a supply and demand thing. I mean, we're getting lots of applications right now, and we're trying to accept everybody. The waiting time might be a little longer than usual, but those are the 2 or 3 things that we look at for the application. And there's some other criteria regarding around funding that gets into grant requirements. In terms of the eligibility for funding, if the home or the property has received support through a previous grant, a new homeowner won't be able to receive additional financial support just because of the rules of our grant, but they're still eligible for the free chipping and the free assessment.
I have a question, Ben. I'm wondering why the focus changed in the new home ignition zone guide to have more of a focus on structure and maybe less of a focus on the forestry portion.
Yeah, I'm sure Jim and Brett could answer this too, but I wouldn't say less. I was around and did experience the 4 Mile Canyon fire. The report that came out after that was very informative, but the research that is done by Jim, help me out, IBHS.
IBHS.
Yes.
Yeah, but the acronym, it's
Institute for Business and Home Safety.
Thank you. So they do a lot of studies on structure ignitability. We could, another time you can go online and watch. And I think both of our websites have links to videos you can watch where they've tested, without trees, just embers being blown at homes, where the vulnerabilities are in homes and how they ignite. And then certainly through real world experience with, go down the list of fires, the recent ones, the campfire in California, locally, certainly the 4 Mile Canyon fire, lessons learned from Cold Springs fire, the Waldo Canyon fire, the Black Forest fire in Colorado. Unfortunately, those events do create teaching moments. And one of those is that in a lot of those places, it wasn't trees burning, it wasn't shrubs burning near homes, it wasn't that intense heat from those fires. A lot of times it was either a low intensity surface fire, or a lot of times embers blowing from fires that may or may not have been burning right within these zones we talk about. Traditionally, those zones that would contain, where your forest is.
And I want to compliment the State Forest Service for recognizing that. A lot of times, if you're an agency and your strength is forestry, you're going to focus on what you do best and look at the vegetation. And so the State Forest Service recognizing that, the structure itself is important. And so incorporating that into this new guide, as Ben mentioned, a lot of folks will stick with just what they know, but the State Forest Service recognizes that's a really important piece. So, we engage with architects and building officials, and that expertise on the structure is part of wildfire preparedness. A lot of people traditionally think, oh, forest fires, it's forests, and we just have to look at the forest. But the home, of course, is a fuel source. Homes burn and can ignite other homes. So we have to look at the structure. And so the State Forest Service, as the name implies, they're great foresters, but they're also very conscientious, about the home itself in their wildfire efforts, whether it's Firewise or all the work they're doing in this new guide. So I really want to compliment Ben and the State Forest Service for recognizing the interaction of the home and the forest together. If you just look at the forest, homes are still going to burn, as Ben mentioned, because of the embers. And we have to look at the homes as well as the vegetation. Great job, Ben.
Jim's got quite a few photos in our new guide, but I appreciate that, Jim. But the program, the Wildfire Partners program, is unique and very, very, very useful. And it's I think it's a pretty comprehensive program, and I've certainly seen its positive effects within the county.
So in consideration of embers and ember storms, is there a hierarchy of things to complete, like after an assessment is completed on your home? Are there like best things to complete, or is it more like low cost, easier to do, and higher cost, more difficult to do?
It's a great question for Brett.
I was just going to say, you're going to give that to me. So, when we do an assessment, we really try to identify the risks on the property. And that could be vegetation, it could be home, it could be things piled up against the home, it could be things surrounding on the property, surrounding the home. It could be a whole host of things. And so we really try to talk with the homeowner if there are really kind of urgent needs, like houses with siding that has a bunch of holes in it, or lots of vegetation up against dry wood siding. We try to help the homeowner prioritize actions, because at times mitigation can be a bit more than expected, depending on the risks on a particular property. And so to help a homeowner kind of get started, we might suggest, why don't you start here and kind of build from there. But we definitely try not to rank things, because it's all important. It really all feeds together. It all comes together in a very meaningful way. And so in an effort to get people going, yeah, we point out some things initially, but all in all, the assessment we give and the recommendations out there from a lot of different mitigation sources, all try to say, hey, it's the vegetation, it's the home hardening, it is lifestyle in terms, do you have a lot of things piled around your property? That kind of stuff. So it's there are some things that are important initially, but otherwise it's all pretty even.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like it's very site specific to each homeowner in each home.
Yeah, it really is. I think that's one of the really important things about mitigation, is that each property can be unique in the risks that it has. And spending the time like Wildfire Partners does and some other agencies do can be really beneficial, because it's the opportunity to put eyes on it with a technical background and spend the time talking with people. So
we want people to work smarter, not necessarily harder. We found people who read a guide or watched a video were spending time and money on things that weren't high priority. So the Wildfire Partners, it's a customized plan for the individual home. And so you're not just taking a generic checklist, you're getting what you need to do and not spending time and money on things that are not relevant to you. So that's, and even we have a great video. Chief Rick Durr from Netherlands, who's been in the fire service for a long time, said, "Hey, I got Wildfire Partners out because I want a second set of eyes. If I'm going to spend a lot of time and money, I need that second opinion, even though I think I have a great sense of what needs to be done, talking with others, and I can become more sophisticated and focus my time and money most appropriately." So that's what we are. It's a second set of eyes to give some guidance. And Brett is one of our 5 mitigation specialists currently. And, he's been doing this, it's 2014. He's done hundreds of these. You can have a better person to come and talk to you for a couple hours. And people find it's like a really valuable assistance. So low pressure in terms of it's voluntary. People decide what they want to complete after after the assessment, and they work on their time frame, unless they have a deadline for their financial assistance. But that assistance from Brett and his eyes and talking to you about your needs, it's really customized, and that's what's nice in that service.
Yeah, it really is a conversation. It's a conversation walking around your property. It is very much that. And what Jim just said about a second pair of eyes, I've had the distinct pleasure of working with a number of firefighters who are in the program or who want to have a second pair of eyes on their property. And it is often really useful because you see things that, given a degree of expertise that you would expect among fire resources, you still don't see some things. And so it is really valuable to have that second pair of eyes and to really identify some things that are important to do that may have been missed. So, yeah.
I'm going to keep asking questions unless anyone else has some, but please feel free to. Okay, yeah, Erin, go for it.
We're part of a HOA, and so I was curious, but we own our home. I was curious if you have recommendations for people who might be in that situation. Can you do that? Is it more about contacting the HOA managers?
Explain a little bit more in terms of the HOA property, you mean?
Yeah. So we're like a townhome, and so we have shared units, but we don't do a lot of the landscaping and a lot of the outdoor work. We can't really change too much. And so we're in Gun Barrel, so it's not quite as applicable.
So we only work.
Curious if you've had that.
No, and essentially we work in the foothills and mountains and not in Gun Barrel. I'm in Gun Barrel too, so probably right next door. But in the sense of we work in a lot of primary residence, not as many townhomes in the mountains, but we've got so many of those primary residents. That's been our focus. But I'm sure there's some structures in Nederland. We've talked with county buildings, and there might be some townhomes that they need to collectively look at that property too. It's just an ownership question. Who has control? We're not going to tell someone to remove vegetation if they don't have that decision-making power of what can be done. So, but we work with a lot of HOAs, and a lot of HOA boards are leaders in mitigation. So, the HOA and the HOA board can get involved and take action. I mean, traditionally, there's a lot of HOAs that might have required shake shingle roofs or required certain things that we've learned now are exact opposites. So we're changing some of those, those behaviors and cultures. So definitely the HOA area get involved and reduce the risk of the townhomes or the properties around in that HOA.
Did you want to ask something, Ben? It wasn't.
Just more for your last question. I just, I was just going to go through parts of that document I shared, our new guide. When you ask about what are, what are priorities, what can you do first, and there are checklists here, but what I wanted to point out is that most of the items on those checklists require maintenance. Most things aren't a one-off. Even cutting trees, you can cut trees and new ones will grow. So nothing you do is static. Everything has to be maintained. I just had open, the 3 pages with the checklist for just looking at vegetation management, and there's 7 or 8 critical boxes per zone, and most of them have to be maintained. But back to Erin's question as well. I think working with whomever, the HOA or I think you said HOA, but yeah, I mean, to me, it's education. So if you can spell out what the risks are and where they are, my assumption where you're talking about, it's probably embers, maybe grass fires, but it's the ember question. So it doesn't mean everything has to change. You just have to understand what embers would do around a structure. So, it doesn't mean changing all the vegetation. It just might require changing some.
All right, one more question for anybody really, but I'm wondering, Jim, you mentioned before that if you're in really close quarters with your neighbors, that you ask homeowners to try and get their neighbors involved. And I know that's very pertinent in areas like Nederland and Gold Hill and other smaller mountain towns. And so I'm wondering if you have any examples of how, I guess, success stories or ways that neighbors are talking to neighbors to try and do that on a more collective scale.
You know, the risk of wildfire is not equal across communities or across homes. You know, we like the principle of equality, but the fact that, you know, Gold Hill or Nederland or a former town site is constructed the way it is versus a community where you might have, like Kate said, 35 acres and control, you know, a larger portion of your wildfire risk. So, you know, people do have different levels of risk. So the amount of mitigation and the risk reduction that somebody living in Gold Hill can do is much less than somebody who has, you know, a different type of a lot. And, you know, obviously the home construction is different. So we can still take action to reduce the level of risk facing every community. But because home is fuel, if you're right next to a home and that home ignites, the chance of your home igniting with that radiant heat and that direct flame is much higher. And so we can still reduce risk in those communities. But if you're 8 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet from another house and that house ignites, your home is going to be at much higher risk. So we don't want any homes to ignite, right? So, you know, there's lots of strategies and we want to, you know, reduce the ignition potential of all homes. And so the same strategies can apply to hardening those structures and removing vegetation and pine needles and those flashy fuels. But it's, you know, we have to just recognize that reality that there's going to be a higher risk. And it doesn't mean we don't take action. We still take action. And so Maya's familiar with Gold Hill, but, you know, you really need to work as a community together on, you know, when you have smaller lots. And it's a change of mentality. I think one of the pictures that Brett didn't explain was a picture of a no trespassing sign with, you know, some cowboy boots and some skull, I don't know, some other stuff. But the idea that this is my property and I can do what I want, nobody else can touch me. When you have a neighbor right next door, that becomes, you know, it's a different mentality of working together and living with wildfire. So changing that ethic where, you know, there's some, you know, community recognition that if you're at a really high risk, and for example, if you're a hoarder and you have your property is full with old cars and old material, you know, that's a extreme high fire risk. And, you know, how do we change that, you know, that culture and mentality? You know, there's some regulations, but oftentimes it's that expectation. So there's lots of challenges out there, but communities working together, individuals working together, like Kate has done in her community. That's what we need, you know, sort of, it's, if we're living in high wildfire risk areas, the national strategy is to learn to live with wildfire. That means we're going to have to change some of those, you know, maybe historical property right expectations or some of our actions, and it's hard. And it's not going to be easy, but you know, there's steps being taken right now. But you know, face it, I mean, Nederland and Gold Hill and some other communities are at extreme risk from wildfire, and we can help reduce that. But there's still going to be some risk.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you.
Well, Jim, and I, you know, I think, you know, back to what I was describing is, you know, historically just focusing on vegetation. I know a lot of resistance when I visit certain communities. You know, you'll get the, hey, you're going to tell me I have to cut down all my trees. Well, that's never been that way. But it can be pretty shocking for some people when change is made to, especially their trees. But I've seen success in communities where you can get past that hurdle by talking about the things we have talked about, where, you know, if you have the hoarder or you have people sharing trees between homes, if you can get them to focus on not just the trees and the things they can do besides the trees around their home. I've seen a lot of success in communities where one person starts doing it and the next person does it, and then, shortly thereafter, you get a pretty solid area of treatment.
Things that are happening in Boulder County and Ben, all you've done, and Brett as well, and Maya's team, a lot of action is taking place, and we're making strides. I mean, that's the good news. There's still more to do. I mean, grasses grow, pine needles accumulate, keeping those grasses mowed, keeping pine needles. I mean, folks from the Calwood fire, we had a home survive right next to a home that's lost. The woman right before, right that morning, cleaned out her pine needles and her pine cones and some of those really flashy fuels. And of course, those pine cones and pine needles accumulate with wind very quickly. So, there's lots of things we can do through education and action to reduce that risk, because, we're going to have more summers like we had last year.
One of the things that stands out to me, Jim, is the tour of homes that we have as part of Wildfire Partners. A lot of people don't understand what mitigation looks like. The comment by Ben just now of, oh, you're going to cut down all my trees. I can't tell you how many times that comes up when I show up to do an assessment. I've even gotten to the point where I don't bring a can of paint to the initial conversation, because it's an immediate kind of, oh, this is going to be a harder conversation than it needs to be. But when people see what mitigation actually looks like, home hardening, that first 5 feet, thinning a forest in such a way that you're not taking out all the trees and that people are still able to keep a favorite tree or more. It's really can be really effective demonstrations. And that tour of homes that we have really is kind of designed around all of that. But as well, I mean, in the county, you can't go many places without seeing a Wildfire Partners sign, certification sign. That's also a way that a lot of people learn what mitigation looks like. And the more people become familiar with that, the easier the conversations can be.
Yeah, we don't have a large crowd here. The city's got a bigger crowd. I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. There's still a lot more to do. The city is sort of starting up efforts, but and this, CU has a good city following, maybe not as strong a county following. This is a small group, but we encourage you to continue and ask us questions and stay engaged and talk to your neighbors. And we appreciate all of the efforts of Brett and Ben's team. And I'm not trying to wrap up. Sorry, Maya, but
no, perfect timing actually for any last comments from anybody.
Here, but the county and the community is doing a lot. Thanks to all the people on the call. So
yeah, I would also just go for it, Ben.
I'll put a real quick plug in, Maya. There's a lot of resources certainly online amongst the folks here, myself included. There's a lot of education that can happen too, but if you are in a community that is getting momentum and you and your neighbors are talking, I haven't heard from a handful of the people that are here, but if you are in one of those communities that is on that precipice of taking action, I will tell you the time is ripe. This last fire season ignited our state legislature to fund a lot of the things we're talking about right now. You have to apply for it, but if you can get your community together and get actions lined out, I have never seen this much funding coming, and it's from a lot of different directions. So I just want to put a plug in for those of you that want to get stuff done, and then the funding is just that limiting factor. There's a lot of opportunities right now.
Yes, very good point to bring up. Did you want to say something, Nate? Yeah, I would just echo that, and I really appreciate hearing Kate talk about her community and that, and yes, if there is momentum in your community, please reach out to the State Forest Service, Ben's office, or Wildfire Partners, or the Boulder Watershed Collective, or the Left Hand Watershed Center, and all of those agencies can help mobilize that community and help mobilize the funding to do those more collective projects as well. So really appreciate everyone being with us tonight. If anyone has some last questions or last comments before we close that out, please go ahead. But otherwise, I hope you have a really good night.